In the year 1692, a dark shadow fell over Salem Village in the Massachusetts Bay Colony. A series of events, driven by fear, superstition, and turmoil, unfolded into one of the most infamous chapters in American history, the Salem Witch Trials. This was a time of deep religious fervor and strict moral codes, where the line between the sacred and the profane was sharply drawn. In this austere world, the Puritan community of Salem found itself engulfed in a panic that would leave an indelible mark on the fabric of American society. The Salem Witch Trials were more than a series of hearings and prosecutions. They were a complex interplay of individual fears, collective hysteria, and the dangerous consequences of unchecked authority. The trials would lead to the imprisonment of many and the execution of 20 innocent people, accused of witchcraft in a community gripped by paranoia. Join us as we journey back to these harrowing times in Salem. We will explore the beginnings of the witch trials, the fervor that fueled them, the lives that were irrevocably changed, and the legacy of these events that continue to resonate in our collective consciousness. In the late 17th century, Salem Village was a place of stark contrasts. It was a community deeply rooted in Puritan values, where life revolved around the church, and adherence to religious doctrine was paramount. The Puritans, having fled religious persecution in England, sought to build a society based on their strict interpretation of the Bible. The villagers of Salem led lives of simplicity and austerity, mirroring the harshness of the New England wilderness that surrounded them. This was a society where individual behavior was closely monitored, and deviation from the norm could arouse suspicion and fear. The spark that ignited the hysteria of the Salem Witch Trials was kindled in early 1692. A group of young girls, afflicted by mysterious fits and bizarre behavior, became the center of attention. When medical explanations failed, the fearful and superstitious community members whispered of witchcraft. As the girls' conditions worsened, the village was swept up in a frenzy of fear and suspicion. The specter of witchcraft, a crime punishable by death according to Puritan laws, loomed large over Salem. In the Puritan worldview, the supernatural was a tangible part of everyday life. They believed that the devil was as real as God, and that witches, agents of Satan, were a genuine threat to their community and souls. This belief was reinforced by fiery sermons and religious teachings that emphasized the constant battle between good and evil. The Puritans held that Satan could make pacts with humans, bestowing upon them supernatural powers to harm others in exchange for their loyalty. Witchcraft was thus seen as a heinous crime, an act of treason against God and the community. In this climate of religious fervor and existential threat, the accusations in Salem found fertile ground. As fear and superstition gripped Salem, rational thought gave way to hysteria. The community, once united by faith, now found itself fractured, its bonds of trust and kinship unraveling under the weight of an invisible and insidious threat. The Salem Witch Trials transformed the village's meeting house into a court of terror and suspicion. The judicial process, influenced by Puritan legal codes and a prevailing belief in the supernatural, was fraught with fear and prejudice. Key figures, such as Judges Hathorne and Corwin, and the minister Cotton Mather, played pivotal roles in perpetuating the hysteria. The criteria for determining witchcraft were deeply flawed by today's standards. Accusations often relied on spectral evidence, where the afflicted claimed to see the specter or shape of the person afflicting them. Such subjective and unverifiable testimony became a cornerstone of the trials, leading to numerous convictions. Among the many tragic cases, some stand out for their sheer absurdity and injustice. Bridget Bishop, known for her flamboyant attire and unconventional lifestyle, was the first to be executed. Sarah Good, a homeless beggar, was condemned largely on the testimony of her young daughter. And Giles Corey, an elderly farmer, was pressed to death for refusing to enter a plea. The trials were characterized by a frenzy of irrationality. The so-called afflicted girls played a central role, their convulsions, fits, and accusations providing damning evidence against the accused. Their theatrics, whether born of belief, manipulation, or something else, fueled the flames of the witch hunt. The impact of the trials on Salem Village was catastrophic. The fabric of the community, once tightly knit, was torn apart. Accusations flew, pitting neighbor against neighbor, friend against friend, and even family member against family member. Even after the trials concluded, their shadow lingered over Salem. The community was left to grapple with the aftermath of its collective madness, the loss of life, the erosion of trust, and the deep scars left on the communal psyche. The Salem Witch Trials became a dark symbol of the dangers of extremism, hysteria, and a miscarriage of justice. The Salem Witch Trials were a mosaic of personal stories, each contributing to the unfolding tragedy. Central to the hysteria were figures like Betty Paris and Abigail Williams, young girls whose strange afflictions sparked the initial accusations. Betty, the 9-year-old daughter of Reverend Samuel Paris, and her cousin Abigail, aged 11, claimed to be tormented by unseen forces, exhibiting fits and convulsions that defied medical explanation. Judge John Hathorne, an ancestor of author Nathaniel Hawthorne, was notorious for his aggressive questioning. He was a staunch believer in the reality of witchcraft and pursued the accused with a zeal that bordered on fanaticism. Reverend Paris, caught between his role as a spiritual leader and a father, became a pivotal figure, his own family entangled in the web of accusations. Rebecca Nurse's story is particularly heart-wrenching. Aged 71, she was a pillar of the community, known for her piety and charity. Her accusation by the afflicted girls shocked Salem, as it shattered the belief that only social outsiders could be witches. John Proctor, a 60-year-old farmer and tavern owner, initially condemned the hysteria of the trials. His outspokenness, however, made him a target. Accused of witchcraft himself, Proctor's attempts to defend his innocence only fueled his accuser's fervor, leading to his execution. The trials were often manipulated by long-standing feuds. Thomas Putnam, a wealthy and influential church member, and his wife Anne were key figures in stoking the hysteria. They used the trials to settle scores against neighbors and rivals, contributing to the accusations against people like Rebecca Nurse, with whom they had land disputes. These personal vendettas, cloaked in the guise of rooting out witchcraft, tore apart the fabric of Salem. Neighbors turned against each other, using the trials as a means to gain land, settle old scores, or remove rivals. The trials became a dark reflection of the worst aspects of human nature: fear, envy, and the thirst for power. As 1692 wore on, the fever pitch of the Salem Witch Trials began to wane. Skepticism grew, partly due to the increasing number of accusations, which began to include well-respected and prominent members of the community. Doubts were raised about the legitimacy and fairness of the trials, and the reliability of spectral evidence came under scrutiny. Prominent figures, such as Reverend Mather and even Governor William Phips, whose own wife was rumored to be accused, expressed their doubts. The turning point came when Mather urged for caution in the use of spectral evidence, warning against the dangers of wrongful convictions. By October 1692, Governor Phips dissolved the special court established for the trials. Those still imprisoned were gradually released, and the community of Salem began the arduous process of recovery. The trials had ended, but their shadow lingered over New England. The Salem Witch Trials had a profound impact on the legal practices of New England. Laws regarding witchcraft and the use of spectral evidence were revisited and revised, leading to a more cautious approach in future trials. The trials became a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the perils of hysteria and injustice. For the families of the accused, the trials left a legacy of pain and stigma. Many lost loved ones, property, and their standing in the community. The psychological scars ran deep, with survivors and their families grappling with the trauma and loss for years to come. In the years that followed, efforts were made to reconcile the wrongs of the trials. The Massachusetts General Court later annulled the guilty verdicts, and families of the victims received apologies and compensation. Yet, the trial's legacy was indelible, serving as a somber reminder of the dangers of fear, fanaticism, and a rush to judgment. The Salem Witch Trials stand as a stark moment in history, a period that reveals the dangers of extremism, mass hysteria, and miscarriage of justice. These events serve as a powerful reminder of what can happen when fear overrides reason and when accusations are taken as truth without tangible evidence. Historians and sociologists study the Salem Witch Trials to understand the mechanisms of societal panic and the human tendency towards scapegoating. The trials are a case study in how quickly fear can escalate and lead to devastating consequences. In American culture, the legacy of the Salem Witch Trials endures. They have inspired numerous works of literature, from Arthur Miller's The Crucible to contemporary fiction, each exploring themes of paranoia, injustice, and the fragility of societal norms. Today, the trials are a touchstone in discussions about justice and morality. They remind us of the importance of due process, the dangers of false accusations, and the need for critical thinking in the face of hysteria. In Salem, the memory of the trials and their victims is preserved through memorials and museums. These sites serve as places of reflection and remembrance, honoring those who suffered and died in one of the most tragic episodes of American history. The story of the Salem Witch Trials is a complex tapestry of fear, superstition, and a quest for justice gone awry. It's a narrative that has left an indelible mark on American history and culture, reminding us of the darker aspects of our nature and the importance of vigilance in safeguarding justice and reason. As we close this chapter on the Salem Witch Trials, we are left to ponder the lessons of this dark period in history. In remembering the victims and reflecting on the past, we commit ourselves to a future where justice, reason, and compassion prevail over fear and hysteria.